But the more champions, the more fees to the sanctioning bodies. And those fees come directly out of the fighters' purses.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. It's Abs of October Red, and we are back, but this time it's for news and reviews. I fell off with this, didn't I? There's so much been going on, tied up with your daytime stuff, tied up with general boxing, tied up with watch-alongs. Am I just making excuses? Yeah, because I could have done these. But the one that I've been following from the beginning is obviously the Reform Ali Act, and the fact that they want to reshape it, bring in some new policies and procedures, and the old school are going up against it. It got through Senate. It's now they've had their speeches in the House. It goes to Q&A after, and that's what we're going to do in this video. I could speak about lots of other stuff, but I think I'm going to probably concentrate on this one first, see how it goes, because you know I'm not scripted like that, and then we can follow on to other topics that I do deem to be relevant as well. I mean, this isn't just like a headline story now. This is something that is pushing forward. It's created a bit of a divide in boxing, and now we've got it on record. It's on YouTube. It's there forever. We can listen to it. Like myself, I'm going to play it back, so it'll be there forever. The Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act has obviously passed the House, bipartisan, so both parties, far left, far right, all agreeing on it and saying, okay, we want to hear about this. The chances are is it's going to go through, because you can say that Dana White's relationship with the current American president, Donald Trump, so it's in a good place to go through. And I think the greatest thing about living in, they call it a democracy, don't they, is that we have an illusion that there's a choice because we're shown options, but really who makes the decisions on those options? Look, I could go down a rabbit hole, but I'm not going to. You guys are mature enough, sensible enough to see things for what they really are. But we're going to go through it. We're going to play the theatrics, because this is what it is. Court is like a massive theatre. We all put on our bold voices. We all, you know, give our opinions. But at the end of the day, it's those that make the decisions that count. I'm going to give my opinion more on that. But let's have a listen. We're going to go with Oscar De La Hoya first. So I'm actually going to play the full transcript. Okay, so each person does 5 minutes each, so that's going to be 20 minutes, and we're going to discuss that, and then I want you to discuss it in the comments. All right, without further ado, Oscar De La Hoya.
Members of the committee, thank you very much for this opportunity today. My name is Oscar De La Hoya. I'm a U.S. Olympic gold medalist, a 6th division 11-time world champion, and now run Golden Boy Promotions. I care deeply about boxing, and more importantly about the fighters who step into the ring and risk their lives for our entertainment. I'm here because I strongly believe the proposed changes to the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act take us in the wrong direction. Today, you will hear many different perspectives, some that may want to discredit the decades-long work the sport's stakeholders have already done to create a safe sport that puts fighters first and creates a free marketplace for fighters to negotiate the best deals for their families and for their personal legacies. I grew up in East LA with very little. Boxing was my way out. When I won the Olympic gold at 18 years old, I had promoters coming at me from every direction. My family and I didn't have access to legal advice. I signed the first contract put in front of me without fully understanding it. It didn't take long to realize I had been taken advantage of. That experience is not unique. Many fighters enter this sport young, trusting, and without resources. And once they are locked into the wrong deal, it is very difficult to get out. That is exactly why the Ali Act exists. I had the opportunity to work with Senator John McCain on this. As a national hero, a prisoner of war, and someone who loved boxing as a former Golden Glove fighter, he understood the risks fighters take and the need to protect them. The Ali Act reflects that commitment to fairness and to protecting fighters from being taken advantage of. Passed in 2000, the Ali Act addresses real problems, including conflicts of interest, lack of transparency, and the exploitation of fighters. It creates a system designed to protect fighters and preserve a fair, open marketplace. Those protections still matter today. This principal change of the proposed amendment allows a promoter to create an entity that serves as both promoter and governing body, a so-called unified boxing organization. This mirrors the existing MMA model and creates a closed system controlling rankings, titles, and access to opportunity. Under this structure, as long as the UBO complies with its own internal rules, it would not violate the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act. Meanwhile, traditional promoters like myself would still be required to comply with full financial disclosures and reporting requirements. In other words, one system operates under transparency and accountability, while the UBOs do not. This is a fundamental shift in power that, if changed, would put corporate profits first, fighters second. We should be clear about who benefits from this. These changes align directly with what Zuffa Boxing and its leadership at TKO Group Holdings have already said they intend to build in boxing, a model similar to the UFC. And we already know what that model looks like, and it does not work for the fighters. The UFC and its parent company agreed to a $375 million antitrust settlement after fighters accused them of suppressing wages and restricting competition. At the same time, Zuffa Boxing is fully funded by the Saudis. We've already seen how that kind of funding reshaped another sport through Live Golf. We should be honest about what is happening here. That was sports washing, a clear effort to use sports to reshape reputation. Now, players who were drawn in by the money are trying to come back to the PGA Tour since the league will lose $5 billion in funding. This should serve as a warning. Transparency is just as critical. In current Zuffa contracts, fighters are locked into rigid earning structures with little to no ability to negotiate. The promoter controls all major revenue streams, including media rights, ticket sales, and sponsorships, while fighters are limited to guaranteed purses and discretionary bonuses, with only narrow participation in upside revenue. As an independent contractor, fighters won't have leverage when one system controls all opportunities. Under current law, fighters already have the right to see the financials behind every event they headline, giving them a fair opportunity to negotiate their compensation. I also want to address safety. The proposed changes suggest improved protections, but boxing already has strong safeguards in place and existing protections, including health insurance for injuries and life insurance for fighters' families. Commissions and promoters ensure fighters are medically cleared and cover related costs. If this proposal is truly about protecting fighters, why are MMA athletes not included at all? They compete in a similar dangerous sport, yet they are completely excluded. That raises serious concerns about whether it's truly about protection or about restructuring control of boxing. Fighters deserve real protection and real opportunity, not have to fight the system as well. If this bill passes, fighters will have fewer choices, less leverage, and less control over their careers. And when that happens, it will not be the sport that failed them. It will be us. Thank you very much.
So Oscar De La Hoya there with a very passionate, well thought out speech, uses examples. One of the key things there, and I'm not sure what goes on in the UK, but you know, my key thing is insurance for the fighters. Apparently the WBC, you know, when I spoke to Maurizio Sullivan, he says that he has got health insurance in place. I'm not sure if that's the same in the UK. I'm quite sure that the fighters off their own back have to have private medical healthcare insurance, because I believe that it may be discretionary whether your promoter pays for those operations. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That is something that I can ask the promoters to narrow that down. You have to remember, this is in regards to American boxing law. It becomes apparent, you know, why they are looking to change this. There are certain things that have been raised. I will play, obviously, the other people that speak, namely Nick Khan, Ali Walsh and Simpson. I'll put all of those points forward as well. But from this one, what Oscar De La Hoya is saying is that they're going to centralize it. There is not transparency. When he speaks about transparency, he's speaking about the money. The gate fees, how much the actual fights make will be hidden, and then fighters will only be given a certain percentage. He goes on to say, and I think Ali Walsh backs his statements, that basically, you know, the fighters won't be entitled to know how much they could earn, but will only get the amounts that they've been given. and it's the promoters, the managers, which they are looking to merge as one. The promoter and the manager can be the same person, same entity. They will be the one that will be maximizing out on fees. Oscar De La Hoya, speaks about his experience when he was just like, yep, seen the contract, looked great, let's sign it, and didn't really have that advice that he should have had, and basically got done over in his younger years. And he's saying that obviously the Muhammad Ali Reform Act 2000 helped change things for the better. Look, he's a former fighter and now a promoter. I'm sure everyone's got good and bad things to say about Oscar. One of the things he's quite loud about is his fighters, unless you actually turn on him or pee him off. But that's human nature. We see that across the board. He seems like even though he's a promoter, he's talking about the fighter's point of view. Like I said, in regards to healthcare insurance, that seems to be something that may be standard in the US, but I can't confirm if that's the actual fact for the UK. He doesn't like the idea of monopolizing. He uses Live Golf as a recent fact of the Saudi Arabian money being pulled out of that. Therefore, potentially could be leaving them stranded. Now they're having to go back to, I think he mentioned PGA golf. Shoot me in the comments. I'm not a fan of golf. I don't watch it, so I don't understand. But I know I have seen the fact that the Saudis have pulled out of it. So he's saying, okay, so what happens? You should learn from that example that potentially the same thing could happen with boxing, with the UBOs. A very strong argument that comes from him, from the point of view of a fighter that started out with nothing. Mentioned that obviously it changes people's lives, the amount of money that you can earn, etc., etc. Goes on about the UFC model, saying about the legal, I think he said over 300 million plus has been settled due to them not obviously looking after their fighters. And how can you bring in this, exceptional new law where you seem to be potentially paying the fighters more while you've got the UFC guys there moaning about their pay? So there's a lot of argument in there. So like I said, I know you guys are going to let me know what you think about that. I'm going to move on to the next speaker. And I think he's the Florida Athletic State Commission, because I think the Los Angeles ones, I believe they pulled out. So we've got Mr. Shipman next, and we'll listen to what he says. To me, he's on the fence. He's open to the idea, probably more pro than against. Have a listen. Tell me what you think.
The state has volumes of hosting major national and international promotions. Just as importantly, we pride ourselves on being a leader in the fighter health and safety. Florida maintains significant medical requirements and oversight standards, including mandatory ringside physicians at all events, robust pro-fight medicals, and strong post-bout monitoring procedures. These safety measures have produced real-world results. For example, during an event last year, a fighter collapsed in the ring. Because Florida requires a ringside physician to be present and immediately available and not simply on call, the doctor was able to initiate life-saving care within seconds. The fighter survived because of safeguards Florida has put into place. This is precisely why strong medical standards matter. The legislation before you proposes significant updates to the federal framework governing professional boxing, including provisions related to fighter safety, compensation, organizational structure, and federal and state coordination. My testimony today will focus on how these changes may function in practice and their potential impact at the state level. Beginning with safety, the bill includes several enhancements that align with and, in some cases, exceed Florida's already high standards. These include medical testing protocols, minimum insurance coverage, and additional anti-doping measures. The legislation establishes national minimum standards for fighter compensation, medical care, drug testing, and insurance coverage. These provisions may promote greater uniformity across jurisdictions and, when implemented, will introduce additional operational and financial considerations for both commissions and promoters. With respect to the implementation, each state will need to update rules, procedures, and administrative frameworks to reflect the bill's requirements. In Florida, we estimate an implementation timeline of approximately 3 to 6 months, depending on the timing and clarity of the final federal guidance. Additionally, the bill introduces structural reforms, most notably the creation of a unified boxing organization. These entities are intended to expand pathways for fighters to compete, improve compensation, increase access to medical care, and promote greater transparency across the sport. UBOs may also offer more consistent access to training opportunities. Ultimately, UBOs are designated to enhance fighters' ability to succeed while reshaping the traditional framework of professional boxing. From a regulatory perspective, this represents a substantial shift. States will require clear guidance on how UBOs integrate with existing licensing, event approval, and oversight systems. Effectively, coordination between federal standards and state regulatory authorities will remain essential to prevent duplication and avoid conflicting requirements. Ultimately, the overall impact of this legislation will depend on its final structure, the extent of federal guidance, and level of coordination with state regulatory bodies. Adequate time, clarity, and flexibility for states are essential for a smooth and effective transition. In closing, Florida stands ready to work with federal and state partners to implement any enacted requirements in a manner that supports effective oversight and promotes the health and safety and welfare of all participants. Thank you.
So there you go. That was Mr. Shipman. And then, like I said, I believe his Florida State Athletic Commission. He's more for it. He's kind of like, okay, our main concern is safety. You know, we have that ringside assistance. We help save boxers' lives should they get into any danger. We need to have uniformity across all of the states in the US so we can, you know, come together. But in the scheme of things, we're going to support anything that really promotes, you know, the health and safety of fighters. And that seems to be a big key thing. It's a key thing for me. Like I said, I probably need to speak to the British Boxing Board of Control and potentially some of the promoters to see what protocols that we've got in place, you know, as UK promoters and governing bodies. They've got different states of athletic commissions. We've got the British Boxing Board of Control. Yes, we are a small island in comparison to what I will describe America as, the continent. It's a country, but to me it's a continent. 50 states across, you know, it's massive. So, yeah, I think he's more for it because they're erring on the side of, okay, I like what you're saying about the safety. So that's him out the way. Let's forward to Nico Ali Walsh. Let's listen to this young man. Quite powerful as well, but listen, have a listen.
And the grandson of Muhammad Ali. I'm here as someone whose name is directly tied to the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act. Not just as a fighter affected by it, but as part of the legacy that law represents. To build on Mr. De La Hoya's statements, fighters are labeled independent contractors. As a result, people say fighters will have options, that we can just go elsewhere. But when the same company controls who you fight, how you're promoted, and whether fans ever see you, it's not much of a choice. When one system controls access, choice becomes theoretical, not real. The Ali Act was built on a simple principle. The people controlling fighters should not also control the entire marketplace those fighters depend on. That separation exists to prevent conflicts of interest and exploitation. The new Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act would undermine that principle. By allowing one entity to operate across promotion, management, and matchmaking, it removes independence. When that happens, you fight who you're told to fight, or you don't fight at all. At that point, real choice disappears, and so does negotiation. This type of centralized system is already seen in mixed martial arts, particularly in the UFC, where a single organization controls promotion, matchmaking, and fighter contracts. In that model, fighters typically receive under 20% of the revenue, compared to boxing where fighters can earn up to 80%. The newly proposed Revival Act pushes that centralized model onto boxing, behind the claim that boxing is broken. Boxing is not broken. If it were, UFC champions at the height of their careers would not be actively targeting boxing fights because of the fair pay. That movement is rarely seen in reverse due to the UFC's centralized pay structure. Boxing has never been perfect, but one of its strengths has always been competition. Multiple promoters competing for fighters creates leverage and fair market value. When that competition is consolidated to one system, leverage disappears. This isn't abstract. I'm living it. Fighters understand that speaking up can come with severe professional consequences. That reality creates silence, and that silence is part of the system. I've personally benefited from the protections that exist today. After one of my fights, I was notified that my opponent tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. That fight was ruled a no contest. That process, testing, enforcement, and oversight worked, and it protected me. In another fight, I suffered a severe shoulder injury in the ring that required surgery shortly after. The current system ensured I received immediate medical attention and proper care throughout my recovery. These are real examples of the system working to protect fighters. That's the point. Protection should be strengthened, especially around health and safety, but not used as justification to restructure the sport in a way that removes power from fighters. The bill that the House has passed should not be adopted. We can protect fighters more effectively than we do today without concentrating control over them. If this bill is passed in its current form, it should not have my grandfather's name on it, as it would betray the principles that his act was created to protect. He fought for dignity outside the ring. This is about dignity inside it. Fighters should not have to choose between their careers and their rights. 55 years ago this year, my grandfather's name appeared on these grounds before this government, and he took a stand for what he believed in. He did it knowing there would be consequences. He did it knowing it could cost him everything. And this country, at its best, recognized the principle behind that stand. Today, I'm here decades later in that same spirit, not as a symbol, but as a fighter living through the reality of this system. This moment is not about the past. It's about whether we continue to stand on those same principles now. And I believe we will. Thank you guys for your time.
Very, very powerful there from the grandson of the great Muhammad Ali. He's covered a lot there, but what I do like is his arguments, which says basically, yep, I understand about what you're saying about the healthcare, but you're using that to smooth over the fact that you're going to take the rights off the fighters, a potential earning up to 80% of the entire revenue that's gained for the fight. That's what they're saying. The fighters can earn up to 80% compared to potentially as low as, what was it, 6% did he say? 10%? So there's a massive gap in earnings there, potentially like 60-70% gap in earnings. So he's saying, yep, all right, fine, you're talking about healthcare, but I can say I've received adequate healthcare and drug testing has been done. I've had a no contest because of it, and also I've had a really bad shoulder injury and that was covered. We have insurance, so do not use that to smooth over the fact that you're trying to monopolize the sport. Basically, that was his words, and that is why he's against it. He wants the fighters to still earn the money. He doesn't want the fighters to have lack of choice, freedom to move about. You know, there's going to be no more competition, he said, because basically the promoters, the matchmaking, the management, everything is done under one umbrella. That's not going to be fair for us. What about if we want to leave? What about if, you know, we don't want to have that fight? We want to negotiate. We're going to lose our ability to negotiate because you're just laying out this straight line, and we're going to lose choice. We want freedom as fighters, freedoms to be able to negotiate, freedom to be able to move around. Having the different promoters helps that. So that was his take on it. Very powerful, and he is speaking from the ground. He's speaking from a fighter's point of view, Whether you want to say, oh, you know, he's got lucky because he's the grandson of Muhammad Ali. Regardless, he's fighting, and regardless, he's more than got a right to speak from a fighter's point of view. They could have chose loads of fighters, but obviously the name, you know, it bears some weight in the game. So I think that was a really good, you know, well prepared speech. But we're going to move on to the finale, which is with Nick Khan. Very interesting this one is. Have a listen and let me know what you think.
Our parent company, TKO Group Holdings. I'm also a lifelong fan of boxing, which makes the current state of the sport all the more difficult to witness. When Congress created the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act in 2000, it diagnosed a serious problem with the sport. This committee now has the opportunity to remedy that problem and restore one of the great American sporting institutions. It may sound odd to some people in this room, but there was a time not long ago when boxing in America was bigger than football and basketball. 50 years ago, when Rocky came out, during the 1976 bicentennial, boxing was the most culturally dominant sport in America. The greatest, Muhammad Ali, fought 4 times that year, an unheard of pace today. 2 years prior, Ali knocked out George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle, which was broadcast to over 700 million people worldwide. 1976 was also the year Sugar Ray Leonard won gold in Montreal. A mere 4 years later, in 1980, Sugar Ray Leonard earned $8 million for a single fight. The average NFL salary in 1980 was $80,000. Talent follows money. The best athletes in America chose boxing then. The 1984 Los Angeles Summer Olympics perfectly encapsulates boxing before its precipitous decline. 9 Americans won gold medals in boxing in 1984. In stark contrast, the U.S. has not won an Olympic gold medal in men's boxing in over 20 years. In fact, it's only won 1 male gold in boxing in 30 years since the 1996 Olympic Games. Again, Congress diagnosed this problem 26 years ago. Almost every major American sport has a league that sets rules, enforces standards, develops talent, and creates the conditions for stars to emerge. Boxing has never had that structure. Instead, it has a patchwork of sanctioning bodies whose business model is charging boxers money for the right to be called champions. Today, the WBC, a sanctioning body, alone recognizes 163 champions across 18 weight classes. To state the obvious, there should simply be 18 champions across 18 weight classes. But the more champions, the more fees to the sanctioning bodies. And those fees come directly out of the fighters' purses, typically 3% from both champion and challenger. The Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act is built on a simple premise: give boxers the freedom to choose a better system. The act as it currently stands would remain in place. The system as it currently stands would remain in place. This is an or option. Create the framework for unified boxing organizations, otherwise known as UBOs, that can do what major sports do: promote competition, develop talent, enforce consistent standards across one roof. For boxers, this bill delivers concrete protections that are long overdue. First, minimum pay of $200 per round, a floor that exceeds the minimum in 49 states and equals that of the highest, California. Second, mandatory injury insurance of $50,000 per bout at no cost to the boxer. Today, thousands of professional boxers compete with no insurance at all. Under the UBO structure, if it is passed that we would do, the health insurance would kick in when training camp starts, not just on the night of the fight. So when a fighter goes into camp 8 or 12 weeks before, if there's an injury in that camp, that is covered. Many fighters fight injured on fight night because, again, there is no insurance until the night of the fight. Third, a 6-year cap on promotional contracts comparable to rookie contracts in baseball and football, giving boxers a genuine path to free agency. Fourth, standardized medical protocols for every boxer, annual brain MRIs, cardiac testing, brain health testing. The UFC is at the forefront of brain health testing with its partnership with the Cleveland Clinic. Anyone can form a UBO, any existing boxing promoter, anyone, as long as they're willing to meet those boxer protection standards that I just articulated. It's for safety and fair treatment of the boxers. If that disqualifies you from wanting to form a UBO, the problem is not this bill. As you know well, few bills pass with overwhelming bipartisan support. This one did through the House, incorporating multiple changes. Some of the sanctioning bodies oppose this bill. That's because it threatens their dominance over the sport. As you know, in 2028, the Olympics return to LA, the same city where those 9 Americans won boxing gold in '84. If this committee acts now, there's an actual chance that American boxing will be prepared to meet the moment. Otherwise, we will find ourselves spectators in our own stadium. To ensure this doesn't happen, we are committing $1 million to organizations that build pathways from amateur boxing to the professional ranks. That starts with the police athletic leagues, which has introduced generations of Americans' youth to this sport, including a young Cassius Clay. It's an unconditional commitment because rebuilding boxing starts in the local communities and gyms, and it has to start now. I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for this committee's commitment, and I welcome any questions.
Right, so that's Nick Khan, very high up, part of Zuffa Boxing, WWE guy. Very, how can I put it? What he said was clear and succinct on the positives, okay? On selling it. Once again, the health insurance at the forefront, investing in boxers, $1 million, you know, for the, I don't know, the police academy of boxers, putting boxing back into the community. To basically, it's like a make America great again with boxing. It was like MAGA but for boxing, because they want champions, they want to breed champions. He's saying that basically we've got no Olympians, we've got no real stars. We're going to invest the money in that. We want those American stars. We don't want to be spectators at our own sport. We want to be the ones dominating it. Very powerful, yeah. Also mentions $50,000 health insurance from the start of your boxing camp. You know, it just doesn't end. It doesn't commence when you get in the ring. That's fine. I don't know how much medical treatments cost. I don't know if $50,000 is sufficient. Those in the comments that are from America, from the USA, let me know, is $50,000 sufficient? Because I actually don't know. Private medical healthcare insurance over here, yeah, that could probably get you some, you know, good treatments when you convert it into GBP. But he's concentrated on that, the real key selling points. You know, say if you didn't really understand that much about boxing, that sounds fantastic. It's all about reinvesting or investing the money that they've got into this new crop of boxers and looking after the ones that we've got. What he didn't answer, and what obviously they go on to questions, and I'm probably going to play a bit of that back, is what I wanted to hear about the potential monopolization of the sport, the fact that, you know, how long are the contracts, who are the negotiators, is there any room for the fighter to negotiate, what are the percentages are we looking at, is this like low 10%, 6%, whatever it is that how much the fighters are going to get? Have you got, as per what Oscar De La Hoya said with transparency, is that going to become available to the fighters so they know, you know, the tickets, the gate, the online, the whatever it is, how much revenue that fight has, you know, made, and what percentage of that is going to go to the fighters? Yes, it's great about the health insurance. Yes, it's about putting money back into the communities. I agree with all of that. I even agree with the fact that there's too many champions. I don't mind a one belt thing. I'm going to put my hands up. So what if there's one belt? Then there's one clear champion and everyone's got to fight for that. Yes, we've got 4 organizations, but then we've got interims, then we've got silvers, and then it just gets ridiculous. That part of it really does confuse boxing. So if there was like one belt, I wouldn't cry about it. But that's down to obviously, you know, the other organizations. Another talking point as well, have those organizations reinvested those sanctioning fees back into the community, back into the champions community, to help them potentially with education, with boxing? Is there any insurances with them as well? The WBC claim that there is. Like I said, I haven't spoke to the other governing bodies, so I don't know what's there. There's an argument, but it works down to the fact of both parties have really, you know, for and against, have really good arguments. Now, the parties that are there, that are existing, you know, all the sanctioning bodies, the four of them, what do they do? Do they provide the insurance? Is the insurance from the beginning of the camp? What liability do they take for anything that happens in the ring? What money do they get from sanctioning fees? Do they invest back into that fighters community or local communities that could really do with some funding in relation to sports, especially boxing? That's where we could have some more transparency from the organizations. Say, for example, if a fighter ends up with mental health issues or ends up being retired. A young fighter that fought a crawler the other day, forgive me, his name skips me, so apologies, it's not intentional. He's had to retire. That's it. So what is he going to do for money? Were there any insurances for him? Because that's a life-changing, for a fighter, that's a life-changing injury. Is there going to be any reviews to potentially the referee that refereed that fight? There's so much. But you've got these guys that are taking percentages from fighters to put the fights on, whoever upfronts it. What are they doing to put back into the boxers? That is my argument. So albeit, you know, these guys are taking a heavy percentage, they can afford to give $1 million to the local communities to help them with boxing. They can afford to give $50,000 per fighter insurance from the start because they are recouping that money. Does that then reflect the 3% that the sanctioning bodies are taking? So is it just hiding it with one hand and showing it with another? This is where we need that transparency. And I would have liked to have heard them say, okay, this is what it is, and you'll get 10% out of the 100, and then we have 90%. But out of that 90%, we make sure we cover your health insurance. We do this, we do that. That's the transparency that we need. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions. This is quite long, so I'm going to try and skim through it. Please feel free to put your comments on what you think about this obviously in the comment section below. I could have gone live, but I didn't want to. So let's have a listen.
Thank you to each of the witnesses. And I'll say at the outset, there are hearings that are sometimes designed to drive a point, and there are hearings where we are genuinely seeking the input of experts. And I would put this hearing in the latter category. Mr. Khan is right. This bill passed overwhelmingly in the House. That's unusual for a bill to get that wide bipartisan support from those on the far.
Yeah.
Who say they are the middleweight champion. The WBA has Arasandi Lara. The WBC has Carlos Adames. The IBF title is vacant. The WBO has Yanibak Alemkhanali. And there are interim champions underneath. So in terms of who is the middleweight champion, by definition, there is no middleweight champion. There's confusion and chaos compared to when you and I were younger. Marvin Hagler was the middleweight champion. Now the answer to that question does not exist.
I want to ask the remaining witnesses, is that a problem? Is that something that could and should be improved?
Mr. Nikon mentioned confusion. Back when Sugar Ray Leonard was a world champion, so was Marvelous Marvin Hagler, who held the world title as well. Thomas Hearns held a world title as well. and the great Roberto Duran also held a world title. I don't believe that confusion comes from having multiple world champions. I believe confusion comes from, or the fights not taking place comes from the actual fighter himself. If a fighter does not want to fight, we cannot force the fighter to fight. There's been many examples where, for instance, say Floyd Mayweather, he protects his O because he has an agenda to protect his record, and therefore he doesn't fight certain fighters. But that's the individual fighter.
I reckon that agenda is going to come back. There are several questions. I'm going to have a better listen to the Q&A, but the questions that I have got towards this, they've all put up very good arguments. I think that they all have points that are right. I believe that if the current organisations had a look at themselves and said, okay, what can we do here? Because we're potentially fighting a losing battle, that maybe they'd have a stronger leg to stand on. This UBO talk has been going on for a while, and none of the organisations seem to have listened to what they're actually going to do, what they're proposing, and how they can improve. This is somebody that is potentially going to be taking all of the fighters, that Suffer Boxing is going to be taking a lot of the fighters and paying them a lot of money. Like Oscar De La Hoya said, there is a risk of obviously the Saudi investment pulling out, because that's where the money is coming from. But if those fighters are just seeing how much they're getting paid, that they've got insurance covered, it looks, on the surface, it looks absolutely amazing. But it's not about the surface. It's about what are you looking to do long term. Recently, we had Conor Benn leave Matchroom and go and sign with Zuffa Boxing. There's potential legal arguments around what's going on there, because it was announced that, okay, is $15 million to fight Regis Prograis. Most of us was like, yeah, whatever. And then obviously a couple of days after that fight, oh yeah, he signed a long-term deal with us now, 2.5 years, and we're going to deliver 6 fights for him. So he's 2.5 year contract. Those 6 fights are not going to be choices of Conor Benn. The court of public opinion in boxing is very, very strong in America. Remember, the Zuffa belt is not yet gone through. They've quite openly said, yeah, okay, we will work alongside the other belt holders while we get our stuff established. But Conor will be put into fights that potentially are more dangerous fights. I don't know if his weight's been confirmed, if he's going to stay down at 147. It potentially, look, when you think about it and how they are going to structure it, it potentially could go against the fighter. And for 2.5 years, he's got to have those 6 fights. So it's, whichever ends first, whether he has the 6 fights and then he leaves, or he's got to do the 2.5 years, whatever it is. And that'll be a lot of fights for Ben, based on the way that he usually fights. So there's a lot of questions to answer. I personally think that it's going to go through, because they've now said, look, we're not saying that we want this to be the only organisation. We're saying that we're happy to work alongside the other organisations. It's an or option. That's what we're saying. So they're not narrowing it down, saying it just needs to be UBOs. They've even invited other promoters to create their own belts, as long as they adhere to the UBO rules that they're setting out. And I know some promoters would think about having their own boxing belt as well. I do believe that. Some will stay with the traditional route. It's very up in the air, but it's definitely a conversation. It's definitely a conflict within the boxing world. And as per usual, I want you to let me know what you think. I am going to go through the rest of the questions and answers, so there may be an update to this. There's been a massive fallout online. Opinions are divided, and that's kind of what prompted me to do this. I'm sat on the fence. Like I said, I wouldn't mind if there was one belt. I'm an absolute advocate for health and safety within boxing, but I would also like to, see the fighters get paid well for what they do. It's an extremely dangerous sport. He announced how many deaths there are in boxing compared to UFC, which is astonishing. Obviously, that's global across everything. So you're always going to have my ear on the health side. Do I care about how much fighters get paid? No, because why should I? That's down to them. They should be able to negotiate and do that on their terms. I'm not benefiting from that. But then you could say, but you're not benefiting from the health side either. But that's just the human side of me, because I'd rather someone fit and healthy, you know, and have rich pockets, but health is always going to come over wealth for me. But that's just me sitting on the outside. The fighters are going to go for the money. But if you're top paid heavy and then you tie yourself in and then it doesn't work out, you can't complain, because everything has been put out here for you to look at as a fighter. Lawyers, same thing. Get your legal advice. Don't have it tied into anybody that works for any of the organizations, because your team has to be there to look out for you. Anyway, that's enough. That's 45 minutes, almost 46 minutes of news and reviews. We'll leave that there. There's a couple of other videos I want to do, and that's going to be about Lawrence Coley failing his drug test, and we're going to cover some of the Ben Whittaker stuff as well. So I'll catch you on that side. Remember, as we say, October, stay ready.